Good evening, everyone, and thanks so much for joining our stream. I'm Will DuPree here at KXAN in Austin. In just about 15 minutes, we're going to hear from the two candidates vying for the state's U.S. Senate seat, and they're going to answer questions about issues important to all of you at home. Republican Senator John Cornyn and Democratic challenger MJ Hegar will take the debate stage tonight before early voting begins on Tuesday here in Texas. In just a moment, we will talk to these two political experts about what's at stake for both candidates in this tight race. But first, let's check in with reporter Maggie Glenn, who is at the debate site at the Bullock Texas State History Museum here in Austin. Maggie, thanks so much for joining us tonight. I wanted to talk to you briefly so that our viewers at home can get a reminder about who these two candidates are exactly. Catch us up on their backgrounds.
Yeah, Will, thanks for having me tonight. So, first of all, we have the incumbent candidate, which is, of course, Republican Senator John Cornyn. He's been in office for 3 terms now, trying to go for a 4th. And then the Democratic challenger is MJ Hegar, who has never held public office before. So I think that Cornyn is going to come out and really kind of stick to his experience as a strength. But at the same time, MJ Hegar is going to call him out for, not doing some of the things that he's promised to Texans and doing the exact opposite, actually, in D.C. I think that he will also go after her for some of the national donors that have contributed to her campaign and some of the national support that she's garnered. But at the same time, she's going to do the exact same thing back to him and tie him to Trump as much as she can. So we're definitely expecting both candidates to kind of go after each other a little bit tonight and try to win the vote of the undecided Texas voter.
Maggie, we see you wearing your mask there at the debate hall. Because of the ongoing pandemic, what are the safety precautions that are in place tonight?
First of all, anybody who enters the building is directed to a room where they have to get their temperature checked, and they're also screened for any COVID symptoms they may have. They get a little sticker as long as they're approved, and then they're allowed in the building. And then anyone you see on camera tonight has actually been tested for COVID. They had to present a negative test result in order to be approved for the debate tonight. So again, all of our moderators as well as the candidates themselves have all tested negative for COVID.
All right, Maggie Glenn, thanks so much for joining us. Good luck tonight covering everything. And now let's bring into our conversation two political experts from the state of Texas. We have Tyler Norris, who is a Republican political consultant, and Ed Espinoza, who serves as the executive director of Progress Texas. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here.
Good to be here.
Good to be here.
All right, Tyler, we're going to start with you. I want to bring up a poll that came out today, and we're showing the results of it to the people at home. It shows from the UT and Texas Tribune that Senator Cornyn is leading MJ Hegar by 8 points. And we should note that he has maintained a lead in most of the recent polling, even though it's been varying degrees at some points. Tyler, because of that edge in polling, what approach should Cornyn have to try to take tonight to try to maintain that advantage?
Well, the most important thing about all these polls is he's consistently been well ahead of the presidential race. His lead has been anywhere between 5 and 10 points pretty consistently in everything I've seen. So what should he do during the debate? I think he should do more of the same, essentially. It's show strong leadership and be the steady hand that he's been in the Senate for quite some time.
Ed, similar question. We're talking about the polls only showing Senator Cornyn's lead within single digits for most of them at this point. What is the approach for MJ Hegar coming into this? And are there any certain issues that you think she needs to really focus and hit on?
Yeah, I do. And as far as the polling goes, the thing to remember about John Cornyn is that while he has kept the lead, he's been in office for 18 years, but he has, I have not seen him above 50% in this race yet, which really shows that there's an opening there for MJ Hegar to capitalize. So what MJ Hegar needs to do is not only come in and demonstrate her ability to lead, which with a military background, she certainly has credentials to do that. But the other thing is to zero in on coverage for pre-existing conditions. Healthcare is one of the biggest issues in Texas, and John Cornyn has been the guy who has tried to repeal the Affordable Care Act as much as any other Republican in the Senate. And of course, pre-existing conditions are one of those things that are covered by the Affordable Care Act. So I think that that's an issue that she can zero in on. Of course, there are plenty of others to talk about, but seeing this race tighten up in the final days has really brought more attention to it. And I think that that can only be a good thing for Texas voters. Competition is definitely a good thing.
Undoubtedly, this race is going to be shaped in some way or fashion by President Trump. And recently, with his statements and actions after his COVID-19 diagnosis, Tyler, what do you think that's going to play to John Cornyn's campaign as he approaches Election Day?
Well, look, there's no doubt that the national race, the presidential race, is going to affect everything down ballot. But again, the polls have shown that Cornyn has been somewhat immune to President Trump's much closer numbers in the state of Texas. So what I think Cornyn has to focus on is his response to COVID, on securing funding for the state in response to COVID, and how his policies for the last 18 years, as Ed mentioned, have been good for the state of Texas, whereas someone like Hegar, who's beholden, I would say, to more DC Democrat types, her environmental policies would destroy the oil and gas business in this state. So Cornyn has a lot he can talk about on MJ Hegar, too. And really, the point of this race is we haven't gotten to any of that stuff yet. The money is just starting to flow on television and on radio. And so this will be essentially the opening salvo of this race in a way that matters. And there's only just a couple days left to go till early voting.
Yeah, anybody who's watched TV here recently has seen one ad after another playing on their screens. Ed, I want to ask you something similar. So how does MJ Hegar, do you expect to address the president and the federal government's response to the coronavirus pandemic?
Well, I mean, it's going to be one of the, I talked about healthcare a moment ago, and healthcare goes hand in hand with coronavirus epidemic. I mean, if there's any overarching issue that threads through all the races across the nation right now, it is the pandemic and response to COVID-19. So that is definitely going to be something here. And regardless of what Senator Cornyn specifically has decided to do, it's going to be a larger issue of branding. Look, Trump is going to be a huge issue in this race and in many other races. And you've got to be able to convince voters who are going in to vote for Biden to also vote for Hegar, but even the crossover voters that are going to vote for Biden, which, let's be honest, there really isn't that many, but how many of them are going to actually also cross over for Hegar? Because people who are looking for something different, they're not looking for Trump light. They're looking for Trump opposite or some way to keep Trump accountable. And that's when you look at Trump's response to the coronavirus, the White House's response to the coronavirus, that's going to be at play in this race as much as it will be in play in any other race in this state right now.
And we are now just about 5 minutes away from this debate getting started here in Austin. This is going to be live, so certain things can happen that you really don't expect to prepare for. I'm particularly bringing up the fly from Wednesday's vice presidential debate. I would imagine, Ed and Tyler, that both the candidates, they don't want to see that happen tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you don't want to see that. I mean, somebody like me wants to see it happen to Cornyn. Someone like Tyler would love to see it happen to the other side. But that's the best thing about these live debates, right, is that they're completely unpredictable. But it's usually less so something like a fly and more so something like the slip of a tongue, which somebody can get cornered on. And I think that's what we'll be looking closer at tonight.
Look, for me, MJ Hegar has not taken the last 6 months. And look, I know the COVID pandemic slowed down everyone's campaign, but she didn't take the opportunity to go on the attack in a big way, in a noticeable way. And anyone fighting an incumbent has to do that. So what I'm looking for is how heated will this action get? How many knives will she try to stick in Senator Cornyn? And is one of them going to slip up due to the hopefully ferocious action that we see tonight?
Yeah, I was going to ask him, how much heat do you expect both candidates to bring here? I mean, because the polling shows that Senator Cornyn has the advantage, so there may be some more incentive for MJ Hegar to kind of go after him in some instances, but what do you all expect?
To me, she has to. You've got to go on the attack. You're down. I don't think there's been a poll where she's been up or perhaps even within the margin of error. And like I said, it's been more than a couple months since she's had the opportunity to do that where people could hear it. I know the ads are starting to really fly across the airwaves, but she's going to have to do something made for TV or TV worthy tonight and make a point against Senator Cornyn. And he's really good at his job. So I sincerely doubt that she'll land a blow tonight.
Well, campaigns are about two things. They're about threats and opportunities. And up until now, Hegar's done a really good job about attacking issues, not people. But you eventually have to shape the threat in the incumbent and the opportunity to topple the incumbent and I expect we'll see some of that tonight. She may have been down in the polls, but that lead has been shrinking. And in fact, a poll came out earlier this week that showed it was a 1-point race. So, there's a lot of variance in the polls right now. But by Cornyn's own admission, she did outrace him in the third quarter. So this is a sleeper Senate race as far as the national map is considered. And as Tyler mentioned, it's really starting to, more eyes are looking at this. The action is really starting to kick up late here, but it's becoming a very competitive race. Should really be interesting for everybody to watch.
Before we go and toss it over to the debate happening here in Austin, are there any other issues that you're hoping will get discussed tonight that are brought up and that the candidates address?
I think the Supreme Court seat has to come up. There's so much tied into it, whether you're talking about reproductive rights, pre-existing conditions in the Affordable Care Act, LGBT equality, or just Cornyn's position to not appoint, screen a nominee 4 years ago, and now to push somebody through right before an election. That's something that a lot of people are talking about. I expect that it should come up tonight.
Hey, look, maybe MJ can answer the question that Vice President Biden couldn't. Will Democrats try to pack the court next January? And I'd like them to talk about the energy industry. So many of these Democrats are now on record against banning fracking. It would put hundreds of thousands of people out of business in this state. So I hope they get to energy policy as well.
Everyone, if you're joining our stream, that is Tyler Norris and Ed Espinoza. Guys, thank you so much for giving us the time of the day to talk about this and offer your insight. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
All right, everybody, we are almost underway at the debate between John Cornyn and MJ Hegar. They're wanting that U.S. Senate seat here in Texas. So let's take a watch as that debate gets underway once again here in Austin.